It started for a group of loggers working in the deep, snow-covered forest as simply another ordinary day. The air was clean. As it moved among the trees, every breath produced small mist clouds. The morning had been uneventful. Just another day of cutting through large trunks and cleaning fallen branches, the constant buzz of chainsaws across the silent woods. But when they approached the river, something felt strange. A far-off thrashing sound shattered the usually peaceful silence of the icy landscape. At first, it was hardly audible over the sound of their boots on the ground covered in snow. But as they went closer, the sound grew more desperate and clearer. Bobbed in the water toward the middle of the river, black. At first, they thought of it as just garbage, a large block of ice or a fallen tree floating downstream. Still, something about the movement drew them. It was crazy, frantic. Every battle, the ice surrounding broke and fractured. Their pace picked up, boots hammering the ground below freezing. As they arrived, their worst fears were validated. Through the ice had a moose fallen. She was big, her thick brown coat glittering in dawn light soaked. She strained to maintain her head above the surface, her breath in sharp puffs clearly in the cold air. Designed for deep snow trekking, her muscular legs were basically useless as she tried, and failed, to find solid ground by thrashing against the sharp edges of ice. She clearly had been fighting for some time. Her motions were languid, and her power was fast fading. Every time she tried to get back up, the ice yielded beneath her every hand and sent her crashing back into the cold depths. She felt rather tired. The men peered at one another nervously. Though this was different, they had seen animals struggle before. Wolves stuck in traps, deer caught in deep snow. The moose was in urgent danger. Delay in response would not help her very long. "We have to help her," one of them remarked, casting about for a way to get involved right away. Not one bit of doubt existed, not second-guessing. The loggers knew of the risks. The ice was really thin, somewhat hazardous. The water had rather cold temperature. None of that, though, truly counted. They owed it to her for saving. The men started off straight away. One of them cried, "We have to get to her now!" Every instant counted since the frigid water was emptying the unfortunate animal of strength. They had not time to waste. They quickly gathered their tools. Driven to make it work, they possessed a few heavy-duty ropes and numerous forestry chainsaws, but lacked others. "We'll have to cut a path through the ice," Logger Jordan remarked. "She might be able to stand and get herself out if we can open a path to the shallow water." Moving fast together, they were one and worked together in unison. One man started the chainsaw, the sharp teeth screaming across the thick ice deafeningly. The frozen bits flew skyward, coating the loggers with ice and water. "Keep cutting!" Someone hollered across the saw's boom. "At least 20 feet are needed." Startled by the sounds, the moose whirled in the water. "Easy, Giddle!" Still another rescuer yelled. "We are trying to help!" She was too scared, though, and her wide black eyes reflected this. Her breaths came in short, panicked bursts. The crew realized the moose was slowing down as they were working. One of the loggers slumped and said, "She's getting weaker. If we do not get her out soon, she will not make it." The chainsaws produced a path across the ice that guided the moose toward the shallow water. Using large logs as makeshift barriers, the loggers directed her toward the opening. "Proceed, honey." One of them urged her ahead by lifting his arms. She first seemed to have problems understanding. Her legs hardly moving, her body shivering from cold and weariness, she kept treading water. The lads began to feel nervous. "Come on, you are quite near." At last, there was a click. Her body moved with the slow, deliberate effort of a creature about on point of collapse as she turned toward the aperture. Her hooves began to find more steady ground as she progressed, even if the water still deep. "In fact, that is it, girl. Keep it going." One halting step after another, they waited in expectation as she gently headed to safety. She paused, though, exactly when it seemed she would be able to make it. Standing there still, the moose's body half buried in the cold lake. Anxiety tapping into his voice, one of the loggers asked, What's she doing? Why is she not moving? Jordan came to see she was quite exhausted. She could not have anything left. She had been battling for so long. The moose motionless for nearly 7 horrible minutes. Watching helplessly, the men held their breath. "Come on, girl, just a little more," one of them softly murmured. The loggers hardly had time to celebrate their progress before finding the moose wasn't under danger yet. Though she had landed her front legs on the ice, her hind legs were still trapped in the freezing water. Trying to force herself forward had worn her somewhat thin. Her body trembled violently while she stood still. Her breath formed rapid, misty clouds. The cold was dragging me down. "We have to help her right now!" one of them yelled, urgency driving his voice. Another of the guys grabbed a long, sturdy branch and walked gently closer. "Maybe we can nudge her forward," he remarked, but the moose, startled, snorted and swung her back legs before he could get close enough. Under her hooves, the ground cracked. Everybody exhaled. She seemed to be able to slide back into the hole they had just cut over for a horrible instant. "No, no, no, do not turn back!" one of the guys yelled, his hands hard gripping the chainsaw as if he could somehow command her to remain stationary. Still under trauma, the moose was having trouble balancing. Her muscles quivering, she strained to thrust forward once more. Then crack! A fresh split in the ice appeared just under her. The loggers watched in horror as she slid backward, half her body once more plummeting into the sea. The group moved straight back to a scion. Thry got to work again. "We need a new plan, and fast," one of them cried. "She won't hang about much in there." Another man dropped from the branch and turned to face one of the nearby trucks. "We have rope in the rear. Maybe we might help pull by wrapping it around her." Then another logger nodded. "Although it's dangerous, I can't see any other way." Hurrying to get to the truck, the team ripped open the doors and hauled out big ropes. Time was running short, they knew. The boys fast tied a strong loop into one of the cables. "All right, we need to be really careful," a logger stated as he returned to meet the moose. "We cannot spook her. She will panic and aggravate matters." On the ice, he tested every stride he made before shifting his weight forward. The other men anchored him with the second rope just in case the ice chose to turn on him. "Easy, girl," he murmured, his voice calm and comforting. Watching his every movement, the moose jerked her ears back at him. Heart pounding, he stepped toward me methodically. He went on even though the ice groaned under his weight. At last, he was near enough. Just behind the moose's front legs, he reached out with powerful hands and gently hooked the rope across her chest. He exclaimed, "Okay, I've got it." The rest of the crew grabbed the rope immediately, forcefully. "On my count!" one cried out at them. "1, 2, 3!" Heaving with all their might, the moose gave a loud grudge while her hooves strayed onto the ice. "Again!" Muscle straining, the troops sunk boots into the ground coated with snow and drew harder. "Come on, girl, you are quite capable of this." The moose kicked her back legs with fresh power to support the effort. She lunged forward then, giving one last powerful push. Her whole body finally surfaced from the cold water as the large monster banged across the ice. The group of loggers was inundated in thanks. "Really?" Someone shouted, "We accomplished it!" But their comfort was ephemeral. The moose has not been moving lately. The lads threw worried stares at one another. She lay still, her breath short and her body quivering frantically. "She's in shock," one of them remarked softly. Still, another clenched his teeth. "Her freezing out here cannot be allowed. She has to get up." He lightly pulled the rope, still under control. "Come on, beloved. You are in safety right now." Still, the moose showed no response. She had been fighting for so long, her energy entirely spent. Her body would not heal. The cold was relentless. One of them pointed out toward the horizon. As the sun sank, the temperature was falling. "We have to get her moving. If she keeps this way, she won't get through the night." To get ideas, the crew convened. One of the guys replied, "We could try heating her up. Maybe make use of some of our clothing or a vehicle tarp." The other gave a shaking head. "And the heat might help us small if we start a small fire a few feet away." The men headed straight into business. They stripped their bulky outer clothing and hung it over the moose's back. Another pair of loggers rushed to gather dry wood and started a fire just close enough to keep her warm without spooking her. "Girl, you have to get up. Come on," he prodded, now with a softer voice. She continued not to move, nevertheless. The loggers listened in reluctant stillness. Would she make it? Minutes later, every second perpetually stretched. Her ears then twitched at last. Drawing in one last breath, "She is here with us still," one of the loggers exclaimed with excitement. The guys leaned forward to pay close attention. Still another flick of her ear. A long, deliberate breath. Then she sighed laboredly and moved her legs. "That's it, Gil. Come on over." The moose battled, but her muscles feeble. She was trying. Just a little more. Her front hooves solidly fixed on the frozen ground, she pushed forward with all the force she could muster. Her legs shivered dangerously, but this time she stayed straight. The men launched a group cheer. She was standing here. It had been useful. The warmth of the fire. The clothes placed over her rear had some insulating effect, and her last push needed came from their continuous support. He let out a relieved laugh. She did it, at last. Deeply breathing, the moose stood there soaking up her surrounds. Then she walked slowly, wobbly forward as if she knew she was truly free. She turned then to face the loggers, as though she knew she was at last free. Her large black eyes caught on their eyes, and the men felt a connection instead of merely solace for first time. The moose remained motionless, her ears flickering as though she were processing what had just happened instead of sprinting into the wilderness. She then stepped closer, surprising the loggers. The moose dropped her head very gently, stopping just long enough for the men to sense she understood. It was something else completely, not doubt or anxiety. A quiet thanks. A thank you devoid of words. One of the lads laughed gently. "You're welcome, lady." She then turned sharply toward the trees, fresh energy guiding her. Her powerful legs cut across the snow effortlessly. She stopped one more time, though, looking back over her shoulder, and then vanished completely. The loggers claimed to see thanks in her eyes. Then she disappeared in an instant, her black figure melding with the relentless expanse of trees to leave just hooves, and the memory of a rescue none of them would ever recall. The men exchanged glances. Some were grinning, others shook their heads in disbelief. "I think she knew," one of them remarked softly. "Knew what?" another inquired. "That we kept her life intact." And deep down, they all believed that to be true. Still, the group stood as the fire danced about them. Nobody said anything for a long moment. One then clapped the other behind. That was, really, one heck of a rescue. He laughed and panted for air. "You are telling me?" Shaking the ice and snow off their jackets and gloves, the men packed their tools. Though none of it counted, they were freezing, tired, and wet to the bone, because they had preserved the moose. And they knew it was all worth it right then, as they gave victorious high fives. "Good work, lads," one of them said, smiling. "High five all around." One by one they slapped hands, their smiles wide even in cold surroundings. Packed and heading back to their trucks, they realized they would never forget this. Little did they also know, their incredible bravery would soon inspire people everywhere. Videos of the daring rescue quickly spread online, touching hearts across the world. Messages of admiration poured in, with many calling them true heroes for risking their safety to save an animal in need.